All right, so today's lesson is going to be regarding mamnu' min as-sarf. Mamnu' min as-sarf. After learning general rules of Arabic grammar, we must learn that there are sometimes exceptions to those rules. Okay, so when it comes to mamnu' min as-sarf, we're going to be learning some exceptions to rules that we previously learned, and that's why it's important that you have solidified the previous lessons. Mamnu' min as-sarf is a category of words that, number one, do not take tanween, and number two, take a fatha instead of a kasra when majroor. Okay? So we learned about tanween in previous lessons. We learned about the state of majroor in previous lessons. So now we're learning about a category of words called mamnu' min as-sarf. They don't take tanween and they take a fatha instead of kasra when majroor. This is the rule of mamnu' min as-sarf that we want to memorize first. And then I'm going to tell you two specific types of words that are mamnu' min as-sarf. One is female names. So generally speaking, we already learned in a previous lesson that female names don't take tanween. Okay, so this is something that we already understand, but we're also learning that female names, not only do they not take tanween, but they also take a fatha instead of a kasra when in a state of majroor. So there are female names such as Maryam. And then the second type of word that is mamnu' min as-sarf that we're going to learn about is male names ending with ta marbuta. For example, Hamza. And again, this relates to a previous lesson where we learned that, generally speaking, male names will end with tanween. But here we're learning an exception, okay? An exception to the rule, and that is a male name that ends with ta marbuta. And we also learned in a previous lesson that generally a sign that an ism is feminine is the ta marbuta. However, there are exceptions to rules. So for example, number one, right? We'll say that it does not take tanween. All right? So if we have the name Hamza, it's not going to take tanween. Previously, we learned names like Muhammad, for example. We said that it would end with tanween because it is a male name, Muhammadun. However, even though Hamza is a male name, it's only going to take one. It's not going to take tanween. Why? Because it ends with the ta marbuta, meaning that it is mamnu' min as-sarf. Okay? And if an ism is mamnu' min as-sarf, it is not going to take tanween. Okay? We already learned that female names, Maryam, we already learned that they don't take tanween. So since female names don't take tanween, we already learned this. However, now you can understand that it's also mamnu' min as-sarf. So that is number one. Inshallah, that's very simple. That's easy to understand. However, this second point is going to be a little bit more challenging depending on your level. So for example, that second rule is that an ism that's mamnu' min as-sarf is going to end with fatha when in a state of majroor. Okay, so it's going to end with a fatha when it's in a state of majroor. So for example, Kitab Maryam. Kitab Maryam. This is a possessive phrase. We went over the possessive phrase in a previous lesson. We want to say Maryam's book. We want to say Maryam's book. So previously we learned that in a possessive phrase, the possession is going to take one dhamma, and the possessor is going to be in a state of majroor. Now who can tell me what harakah should go at the end of Maryam to show that it is in a state of majroor, and therefore making this a possessive phrase? Maryam's book. Kitabu Maryam. How should Maryam end? Which harakah should it take? Very good. It should take a fatha. Yes, many of you are getting it. It should take a fatha. Why should Maryam take a fatha? Because it's a female name. Very good. And because it's a female name, it's mamnu' min as-sarf. And this is very important to know for many reasons, but one very significant reason is because the name Maryam is in the Quran. The name Maryam is in the Quran. In the Quran, for example, we'll find Ibn Maryam. Ibn Maryam. What does Ibn Maryam mean? Ibn Maryam means son of Maryam. Okay, it's also a possessive phrase. Son of Maryam. Who is the son of Maryam that's being spoken about in the Quran? Very good. Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. Prophet Jesus, Prophet Isa alayhi salam. You'll find this phrase in the Quran. But if you don't understand mamnu' min as-sarf, then you would think that, well, Maryam should end with kasra because it's majroor, it's a possessive phrase. However, Maryam is going to end with fatha. Why? Because it is mamnu' min as-sarf. Okay, so these things that we're trying to teach you, inshallah, it's to help you understand the Quran. That's why we want to focus on learning Arabic grammar, so we can understand the Quran, we can understand the hadith. So another example is qalam Hamza. Qalam Hamza. We want to say Hamza's pen. This is another possessive phrase. Okay? So we learned about the possessive phrase that the possession is going to take one dhamma. It's not going to take tanween, and it's also not going to take the definite alif lam. It's going to take one dhamma. Qalamu Hamza. Hamza needs to be in a state of majroor. How should Hamza end? What harakah should go at the end of Hamza? Very good. It should end with a fatha. Should it end with one fatha or two fathas? We learned in a previous lesson that generally speaking, male names are going to end with tanween. However, Hamza is not going to end with tanween. Hamza is an exception because it's mamnu' min as-sarf. And we said that mamnu' min as-sarf does not take tanween. Also, Hamza is in a state of majroor because it is the possessor in this phrase. It's the possessor. And we learned that an ism that is mamnu' min as-sarf, it takes a fatha when majroor. Understood? Why? Because it's mamnu' min as-sarf, because it is a male name ending with ta marbuta. Okay, so is this clear? Mamnu' min as-sarf. There's other types of words that are mamnu' min as-sarf that you'll learn later, inshallah. But for now, just to summarize, there's an ism that is mamnu' min as-sarf, meaning that it doesn't take tanween, and it takes a fatha instead of a kasra when in a state of majroor. The two types of mamnu' min as-sarf that we're learning about today, female names like Maryam, and male names ending with the ta marbuta like Hamza. Clear?